Hi, everyone. So today we're going to go over advanced checkout training. And the purpose of this training, so first of all, when we look at the checkouts, right, this is one of the most important processes that we do at the car wash specifically because the most important thing that we can do to keep customers and stay in business is to make sure their cars are coming out clean. And the checkout process is that last line of defense. So if you're doing this training, that means you've already done a few checkouts. You've already understood the basic process. Today, we're going to go over the specifics to make sure that the checkouts are consistently really strong, what to look for at each phase, essentially. And just to be clear here, a good checkout means that the car came out clean. And a really great checkout is one where it came out clean and you finished that checkout in 3 minutes or less. If you're getting on the car when the team is already working on it, so they're still finishing up their process and you're just getting to it, we want to make sure that you're finishing just as the team is finishing. If you're getting there a little late and they're wrapping up and you're just starting your checkout, make sure that you're done with that checkout with no more than just a minute or two beyond when the team finished their actual process. So just to review, so we're going to start at the front bumper here. You're going to see we can start at the front bumper. We're going to move to looking at the side of the car. We'll check the side view mirrors in the window, front windshield. Then with the side windshield, the doors, open up the door. You'll look at the door panel, the seats, and the floor. Same thing, door panel, seats, floor on the back. Then we'll go to the back around the license plate, around the rear windshield, we'll check. Then we'll come back around and we'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll look at the door panel, door, seats, floor. Then we'll do the same thing on the driver's side. We'll do the $1 million view by actually sitting in the vehicle, making sure that the customer, as they get in the car, what they're seeing looks great. And then we'll make sure that we look at this side view mirror, the driver's side view mirror, and finish up. That's the basic flow process. So what you'll need to do this. So first, we're going to take a blue and a red towel and pre-spray them both with window cleaner. So we're using window cleaner instead of all-purpose here because the window cleaner doesn't ever leave streaks. So you can spray the towels as much as you want before, and if you wipe down, let's say, the hood, you don't have to worry about getting all-purpose on it and it leaving streaks on the car. Also, the difference in the cleaning application between the all-purpose and the window cleaner is very minimal. There's only some times where that all-purpose is going to do a better job. So that's why we have here in the bottom that saying essentially that we'll have 3 different tools that we may use, which would be our magic eraser, our steel wool, and our all-purpose. So if there's a heavy spot or something that we want to try to take out, we can use the all-purpose. We could use the magic eraser. If there is lots of bugs on the front windshield or a sticker that we're trying to get off one of the windows, we'll use the steel wool. And then on every car, obviously, we're going to start by doing the bugs using the bug sponge. So before we get into the actual process, one thing that comes up a lot is what exactly are we supposed to throw away? What aren't we supposed to throw away? This can be really challenging. So if a customer doesn't tell you, hey, throw this stuff away, the only things that we're going to assume are trash, meaning that we're going to assume we can throw away, are empty bottles and wrappers of any type, empty wrappers of any type, receipts, things that, old papers and stuff. We're not going to assume that those things are trash. We don't know if people want them. So we're just not going to take them out of the car. We're going to move them around, work around them, but leave them in the vehicle. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure we look at that receipt, make sure that if there's a detail, we're going to let the aftercare manager know and confirm that it was completed. If it wasn't completed, we're going to get the detail done first before we start the checkout. So right at the beginning of the car, the step 1, we are going to start by scrubbing the bugs in the front windshield. So you're going to start by scrubbing the front bumper and the hood, the side view mirrors. The side view mirrors are important. Those are probably the most likely thing to get skipped. But in general, I think we do a pretty good job taking the bugs off the cars. The next thing, and this is something that we have to make sure that we do consistently, is that we take a step back and we look for streaks on the front windshield. These streaks generally are much easier to see when they're in direct daylight. So if we don't have, if the car's not in direct sunlight, we really want to pay careful attention and really try to look for the streaks. If there are streaks, we're going to touch up that front windshield. That could be buff and dry streaks, so streaks on the outside of the window, or it could be streaks from doing the front windshield, the inside from the associate. Either way, we're going to want to touch those up. Also on the front windshield, we're going to make sure we look for bugs. If there's a bunch of bugs on the front windshield, we're going to take that steel wool and we're going to wipe down that windshield and clean it off. And if we're getting to the car when the team is still working on the windows, we're going to try to really make sure that we're watching the driver's side associate box and fill that front windshield, because if they do a really good job there, that's going to limit the amount of rework that you need to do. So this is a really important step that you should be watching. Now, the next thing, we're going to walk down the passenger side of the car, stopping at the side view mirrors and side windows. So we're going to make sure that the side view mirrors are wiped down. If they haven't been, make sure you wipe them down. We're going to also make sure if there's any spots on the outside windows. So they might be the little yellow spots from the trees that come off really easily. We want to take those off. If they may be water droplets from the car wash, they could be streaks from the buff and dry. If any of those things are there, we want to just quickly, with your pre-sprayed blue towel, just wipe down the window. Now we're going to do the passenger side door. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the door jambs, and we're going to pay specific attention to the actual door, the bottom part of the door. This is a part that gets skipped a lot, and it's an easy thing to correct. It takes maybe 10 seconds to wipe down all of the door jambs. It's nothing. But if we miss it in the car and the customer sees it, it really doesn't look good. Then we're going to go to the door pockets. So we're going to wipe down the doors, making sure that we get the buttons, as well as if the door pockets are empty, we're going to wipe them down. If there's a little bit of loose material that we can take out quickly and wipe down the door pockets, we want to do that. If there isn't, and there's a lot of like coins and stuff and CDs, we're not going to move all that stuff around. But if there's stuff that's easily removable, we want to still do the door pockets. And then if there's any removable spots, so maybe it's a little bit of what looks like makeup, or it's just something that comes off and wipes off easily, we're going to try to take that off. If it's the driver's side front door where the customer actually is sitting, and there's, let's say, some makeup spots right there on that door, that's a great opportunity to really wow a customer. Grab the magic eraser, quickly remove the spot, and then show the customer that when they're coming back. Lastly, when we're doing the doors, we want to look for these the running boards. A lot of customers that have SUVs and pickup trucks will have running boards. They can get really dirty, and frankly, a lot of what comes off the car in the car wash ends up sitting on the running board. So we want to make sure we wipe those down as well. The next step here is vacuuming. And so when we're checking the vacuuming, we're going to first make sure that the rubber mats here are clean and dry, as well as the overall vacuuming process looks good. We're going to pay special attention to the seams of the seats. So if there's a little bit of sand in there, we want to make sure we address that. The crevices, right? So the crevice right between the door and the seat is a spot that if the air tooling wasn't done properly, there could still be some stuff there. And then the sidewall. So you'll see on a lot of cars, there'll be carpet that goes up vertically along some of the surfaces of the car. We want to make sure that that's being vacuumed as well. If there are any loose items on the seats, please make sure that we are working around them, vacuuming underneath them. We want to make sure that we vacuumed underneath the seats. They're being pulled back and forth. And we want to give a quick wipe down to the seats. Really quick. This is a 5-second thing. Do not worry if there's spots. You're not trying to remove the spots. You're simply dusting the seats. And then we're going to look over the center console from the passenger side. This is really helpful because it gives you a different vantage point. So you're going to see different stuff from the passenger side than you're going to see from the driver's side. And we're going to do our best to make sure that center console is nice and clean. So now we're going to move over to the passenger side rear door. Same principles for the most part. We're going to look at the door jambs. We're going to look at the rubber mats, and we're going to look at the instruments or the little buttons on the side of the door. Again, the running boards. This is essentially a repeat of the process that we did in the front. Now we're doing it in the back. On the the passenger side vacuuming in the rear, again, this is a review of the front. Very similar process. We're going to make sure we start with looking at the rubber mats, making sure the vacuuming process overall was done thoroughly. The main differences here are that we're going to look for the third row. So if there is a third row in an SUV or even some sedans have third rows, we're going to make sure we look and that it's been vacuumed. We're also going to, again, quickly wipe down the seats and pay special attention if we have kick marks and stuff on the back seats. Very common if there's a child, you can see in this picture. Kids can pretty much perfectly kick those seats. So we want to make sure that we're wiping that down. Same thing with the back of the center console. This can get dirty. These can also have cup holders that we want to also address if they're there. And then we're going to make sure that we clean in between the baby seats as well. So if there's two baby seats, the middle can sometimes get missed. We want to make sure that that is nice and clean. So now we're going to move back to the rear of the vehicle. And here, this is pretty simple, but stuff that can get missed if we're not paying attention to it. First, we're going to look at the rear windshield, so making sure it has no spots. If the customer has a sedan and they asked us to vacuum the trunk, we are also going to want to wipe down the jambs of the trunk. And then we're going to look on an SUV if it has this little roof wing. I had no idea what this was called before I made this training, but apparently it's called a roof wing. And we want to look at the bottom of it and wipe that down because that will get dirty and the car wash typically doesn't clean that super well. And then around the license plate, a common spot, specifically on white cars. Now we'll move into the driver's side door. And again, same thing, door pockets. Just as the passenger side door pockets, we're going to look at the door buttons and remove any removable spots. Then on the rear vacuuming, again, same thing as the passenger side, looking for the third row, kick marks, cup holders, and rear of the dashboard, between the baby seats, as well as we're still going to make sure that we're paying special attention to the seams of the seats. We're going to pay special attention to anything. If there's stuff on the seats, we're going to lift it up and vacuum underneath it. We're also going to make sure that we're vacuumed underneath the seats. When we get to the front driver's side door, the door itself is is pretty much the same as the rest of the seats. But remember that when we get to this area, this is the most important part of the checkout process, because this is what every customer is going to see. Most customers don't necessarily inspect the whole vehicle. Some do, but for the most part, customers are going to take their keys and they're going to walk directly to the driver's seat and get in and drive away, unless they see something that's wrong on that path. So this particular spot, this is where we really need to make sure that things look great. So again, the door pockets, the door jambs, the buttons, remove any removable spots. This is where, if there's something that can be removed but takes a little bit of extra effort, like a makeup spot, we want to do that on this door. And then we also want to make sure that the buttons, like the buttons to move the seat back and forth, are wiped clean. This doesn't have to be done on every seat, but for the driver's seat, where again every customer is seeing it, it's worth the extra 2 seconds to do. And then when we look at the vacuuming, again, this is the same thing as the rest of the process. However, we're going to make sure we pay very special attention to this area for the same reason as the doors. It's what every customer sees, making sure we get those seams of the seats in between the crevices, vacuum underneath the seats, and we wipe down the seats. Now, this is probably the most important part of the checkout process, is the $1 million view. We're going to sit down in that seat. So you're actually going to sit in the driver's seat, and then you're going to work top down. So we're going to start with the rear view mirror, making sure that that is clean. Then the front windshield has no streaks. The dashboard is clean. The steering column and the instrument cluster, this is clean. This is something that gets missed fairly often, that we don't dust right behind the steering wheel and the steering wheel itself. I mean, think about that. If you get into the car, this is one of the first things you're going to see is right at the steering wheel. So you need to make sure that we're dusting this. And then we're wiping down the radio very, very, very gently, using only a blue rag. This is in red because it is extremely important. If we use a red rag that has maybe some dirt on it, we risk damaging this, and that is absolutely no good. So please make sure you're using only a blue rag, and very gently. Do not worry if the fingerprints and stuff don't come off it. Do not press on this piece of equipment very hard. The radio, the navigation, very lightly. If you're not comfortable touching it, frankly, don't touch it. If there's removable stuff in the cup holders, take them out, wipe down the cup holders. This includes, a coffee cup. This includes little, debris and stuff, papers and stuff. If there's a ton of change in the cup holders, you do not need to move that out if they're completely filled with change. But if there's a couple quarters and stuff, yeah, we should move those out, wipe it clean, put them back in. And then we're going to make sure that the whole center console is really wiped down well. So making sure that, around the shifter, that this is nice and clean, around the sidewalls of the center console, that's nice and clean as well. Then we're going to get out of the car, give the car really one last look here, making sure that the side view mirrors on the driver's side are clean and the windows on the driver's side are clean. Again, if there's any little yellow spots or streaks from the buff and dry, we need to address those. Then we're going to call back the customer. So here, we're going to make sure there's nothing left in the car, right? So this is something that I think we may miss once in a while. We'll leave bottles and towels in the car, and a customer will be like, hey, you left this thing. Let's try not to do that. So just give it a look right before you get the keys in the receipt. We make sure that we have that we look at the receipt and all of the services were done properly there. If they weren't, obviously we make sure that this is done prior to getting the customer. And the most important part of this last process is that you have the right keys, that you don't just have a pair of keys, you're sure they're the right keys. If they are for, if let's say there's two Nissans, white Nissans right back to back, and you're not sure which one is what, press the unlock button and see which one lights up. If we give the wrong keys to the wrong customer, this creates two really important issues. One, we end up generally having to replace those keys, which is several $100s to replace. Two, that car, depending on the vehicle, may be stuck in the bay then until we can either get it towed out, that's another couple $100, or the customer comes back with the customer comes back with the keys that we mistakenly gave them, which in our experience, that's like a 50-50 shot that they're coming back at any point. So please, please, please make sure that the keys are given to the right customer, the right keys are given to the right customer. And that concludes this training. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to ask me or any of the managers any questions. The goal of this is to give you a concrete idea of what's being required in the checkout process. But if there's any other situations that we didn't cover here, we get it. Just go ahead and ask us, and we'll do our best to give you a good answer and give you clarity. Every car is a little different, but if you do these things and we do them and they become habit, you'll get through the checkout quickly, efficiently, and most importantly, the customer is going to leave happy because you've touched up 95% of the things that they could potentially be upset about.